Back to the Future is one of the greatest film trilogies of all time, but it was not originally scheduled to be a trilogy. Writers Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis have said they plan to release only one movie, but upon the success of Back to the Future in 1985 and subsequent VHS sales in 1986, sequels were authorized and Back to the Futures 2 and 3 were released in 1989 and 1990. Zemeckis, who is also the director of all three movies, has even said that if they had planned sequels, then Jennifer Parker would not have been in the DeLorean when Marty and Doc Brown took off to the future, because she complicated things, kind of a third wheel situation where she should not know about time travel, and yet here she is suddenly, and the first thing they do pretty much in Back to the Future 2 is knock her out and remove her from the story. So, the movie has been a huge success over the years. 2020 marks the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future, and for this anniversary, there are not one, but two Back to the Future games being released by Funko Games and Ravensburger. The Ravensburger game looks at all three movies in the trilogy. For this video, I am focusing on Back to the Future Back in Time by Funko Games and its in-house design team under the pseudonym Prospero Hall. This game looks only at the events of the first movie. And of course, if only that first movie had ever been released, it would still be one of the best movies of all time. Seriously, I love Back to the Future and watch it almost every year. It's an incredibly good movie that holds up as well as an adult as it did when I was, whatever age I was, 17, when the movie was first released. It's an incredible film, and now you get to play out the events of that movie in this game. Let's see how it works. Here are the components for Back to the Future Back in Time, set up for a 4-player game. The game board shows downtown Hill Valley divided up into 10 named locations. Each player is going to take one of the 4 player markers and start in Town Square with Marty McFly, Doc Brown, Jennifer Parker, or Einstein. And these characters are going to take different actions over the course of the game, and they must achieve 2 conditions in order to win. One thing you must do is get George and Lorraine together. More specifically, you must have them in love, which is tracked on this love meter here. Even more specifically, you must have this marker in one of the 3 heart zones at the end of the game. On top of that, you must move the DeLorean through the streets of Hill Valley and have it in one of these 3 spots at 10:04 when the lightning strikes the clock tower in order for the DeLorean to go back to the future with George and Lorraine in love, and everything will be as it should be. If that does not happen, if you reach 10:04 and the game lasts a specific number of turns, because you start with the turn tracker in a specific location for 4 players or 2 players, or on the other side of this board 3 players, you have a specific number of turns in order to make everything happen. And if you hit 10:04 and either of these conditions are not met, then you lose. Additionally, if the photo of Dave and Marty and Linda vanishes completely, then you have also lost the game because these characters have ceased to exist. And they're the ones we really care about in this game. On a turn, you are going to take the actions shown on the turn tracker. For the first turn of the game, you are going to turn over one of the trouble cards. They come in 3 levels, and you will advance from level 1 to 2 to 3 over the course of the game. You turn over the trouble card. It goes in a specific location, the clock tower in this case, and it has a specific effect on play as long as it's in play. Here, players' characters may not move into or through Town Square. Normally, the main characters can go into Town Square, but George and Lorraine and Biff cannot. So now everyone is excluded, which makes movement a little more onerous to try to get around the board. Second thing in this case, the start player turns over a movement card. And these movement cards, as you see depicted on here, they will move Lorraine or George or Biff or 2 of those 3 characters based on whatever is shown on the other side. It will never move all 3. In this case, we move George clockwise 2 spaces. We move Lorraine counterclockwise 1 space. Biff does not move at this time. We'll show you how he moves a bit later. You've finished these parts, so now a player will take their turn, and each player has a character board that shows a unique action for that character, in addition to 5 power tiles. And each player has a slightly different arrangement of power tiles based on the character in the game. They have a different unique power. You are going to take as many actions as you can or want to based on what you have available. Each of these tiles can be flipped face down in order to give you 3 movement points. And movement is always orthogonally. You can never move diagonally from one space to another. So if I were Marty McFly, I might flip over this token and move 3 spaces, go 1, 2, and you can escort George or Lorraine with you as you move. Not both of them, however, only one. You are trying to get them together because if they are together in the same space with you, you can take an influence love action. You can do that by flipping over any of your power tiles, but you probably want to do the pink because the dice have a different arrangement of symbols on them. Each die has 2 Biff heads, and then it has 2 wild symbols, and it has 2 success markers for a specific action that you are trying to take. So a wild is always a success, a specific symbol is a success, and a Biff is always a failure. I might want to flip over the pink. I'll flip over a blue, which means I will roll 1 pink and 1 blue. You can never roll more than 2 dice of a color because there are no more dice of a color than 2. That is the limit. 2 is the number. I will roll these dice. I got 2 successes when these characters are together, and I am with them, and I take an influence love action, which is what I did. For each success, I move this marker up 1 space. If I had failed, for example, let's say I rolled a Biff head and a wild, I would have only 1 success, and Biff would move. Specifically, he would move towards Lorraine or George. In this case, they're in the same spot. If they weren't in the same spot, he would move towards whichever person is closer. If there's a tie, he moves towards Lorraine because he's the one that she's the one he wants to harass the most. I had 2 successes. If I did not have successes, let's say I rolled this instead, I could choose to re-roll this die and hope to get something. If you get a Biff, then that Biff is locked and you cannot re-roll it. So the odds of success vary a lot because, of course, it depends on what dice you choose. If you choose anything that's not specific to that challenge, you have a 1/3 chance of failure, a 1/3 chance of success, and a 1/3 chance of nothing. And then you can re-roll that and try to get something else, but if you get Biff, it's locked. And if you get Biff locked in there, then Biff's going to move towards these characters. That didn't happen in this case, though. I succeeded with my influence love challenge. I can also try to achieve one of the opportunity cards. You have a deck of opportunity cards. You start with 3 on the board, and when one is resolved, you immediately turn over another one. You have to roll certain symbols in order to meet that opportunity. So I can turn over the green or the blue or both of them in order to try to get this happening. So let's go ahead and do both. Green and blue. Yes, got this, got another success. Okay, when this happens, you look at the reward. You are drawing 2P. That means 2 new power tiles, and you're going to keep one for yourself, and you're going to give one to another player. So this is one of the main features of the game. You are trying to get more powers and better powers so that you can do more things. You have this tile which lets you re-roll all the Biff heads that you get whenever you're trying to take some sort of action. That's really good because you don't want Biff getting together with George and Lorraine. We'll show what happens with that on a later turn. This one lets you roll 2 dice. So if I choose this tile, I can use it for 3 movement, or I can choose to roll a pink with it, or a blue, or both, which can be good or bad depending on what I'm trying to do. I will take this tile, I'll give this tile to another player. When you acquire a tile, it goes face down, so you do not get to use it the turn that you acquire it. All of my powers are face down. I can do nothing else. To end my turn, I go face up with everything, and now the next player goes. My special power, by the way, once per turn, I may move Lorraine 2 spaces toward me. So if I'm not able to escort, or perhaps I'm in some sort of situation here where I can spend a tile to move George up to 3 spaces, and then I can use my power to call Lorraine over, and now I will have them together, and we'll get an opportunity to take an influence love action. Let's turn over a different opportunity card because that one was fulfilled. Here we've got Scare George to Act, which requires George being in this space, because of course you cannot scare him if he is not here. Let's take the next turn. We have only movement. we'll say Doc is going. You're going to move Lorraine clockwise 1 space, and then you're going to move Biff twice. So again, Biff moves toward whoever is closer out of Lorraine or George. He is just trying to harass them and cause trouble. So at this point, he's just near here. If Biff were already here, and we had 2 Biff heads, he would move here, and then for the additional Biff head, instead of moving, he is going to move the love meter down 1 notch, because he is antagonizing her, and she wants nothing to do with him, and her feelings are also messed up, and she doesn't want to love George either, because at this point, really, she doesn't even know George. So we're not in that situation at the moment. We'll now have Doc Brown go. He's got these tiles here. He is very good at preparing the DeLorean, and he's just okay at everything else, at least initially. His special power is to, once per turn, go to where the DeLorean is. I did not realize Doc Brown could teleport, but apparently he can. I will use my power to go here. I will then, let's say, spin these 2. Let's just go ahead and do all of these. Yellow, blue, red. Let's go for movement of the DeLorean. I need arrow symbols. Or wild. The Biff is locked. I got arrows here. This is stars, which is no good. I'm going to choose to re-roll. I can re-roll continually. And this, Biff heads. But, so, you roll the dice. Biffs are locked. You can re-roll things. You can modify dice, because there are some special powers that let you modify things, such as turn a wild into 2 wild, or turn a specific symbol into a wild. So if I had this, then I could have used this as 2 successes. But I do not have this. Instead, I have reroll all Biff. I can reroll these 2. If I get Biff again, he's locked. I got 1. I'm going to keep... eventually you get nothing. So I do the successes. The DeLorean moves 2 spaces. Biff now moves twice. 1 here, and then once, affecting the love meter. That's not good. I'm going to use one of these to move up to 3 spaces. And now we get to another aspect of preparation for this trip. We need the DeLorean parts, the cable, the hook, the gasoline. We must collect all 3 of these items, which start at different locations. When you collect an item, and I will try to do this now by rolling this green die, knocking over George in the process, but success! I only needed 1, and I got it. I pick up the cable, and it is transported to Doc Brown's house. If you do not have all 3 of these parts, when the DeLorean pulls into the driveway at Doc Brown's house, it cannot leave the driveway. You must pick up all 3 parts in order to succeed. Doc is all face down. He is done. Let's say that Einstein's going next. We move this marker. We have movement. Move George counterclockwise 1 space. Biff goes twice, and Biff is just standing here harassing Lorraine, so down 1 and 2. This is bad because soon we will have a love check. I'll jump ahead a little bit after showing Einstein's turn. Einstein's special ability is to bark at Biff. So, once per turn, if Einstein is within 1 space of Biff, which he is not at the moment because diagonal is not adjacent. But we can, let's just say, Einstein's going to, spin this in order to move 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3, escorting George as he goes. He can now use his special power, bark, bark, and Biff moves 2 spaces away. Kind of interesting ability to do. Or before we do that, let's do something else. Let's do a fight challenge where we fight Biff. So we are going to flip over the blue die. Let's just do a yellow die as well while we're at it. And we get 2 successes. With 2 successes here, the first success knocks Biff over, and the second one adds a little knockout marker. And now for each Biff head symbol we get in the future, first thing you do is remove one of the markers. If all the markers are gone, you stand Biff up, and then he starts harassing them once again. A special weird thing, I can now use Einstein's power. Even though Biff is knocked down, I can still bark, arf, arf, and he is moved 2 spaces away on his back. It's a magical transporting there. And now let's get these two in love again. I'm not sure what power Einstein has to do that, but we just roll with it, right? All right, re-roll this. Nothing. Yes, 2, and we get it out of the danger zone here. That's the end of Einstein's turn. Jennifer's special power is that she can move Doc or Marty or Einstein up to 2 spaces toward her. And that's special because you can combine the powers of other people in order to do things. If we go to the next turn, we get a new trouble. This trouble goes away. No one solved it. No one got any reward. George's house. The gang eggs George's house. Okay. Move George to George's house. He cannot be escorted or moved. Jennifer can't get them together at the moment unless she brings Lorraine over to George. Too bad. Also, Biff moves twice. Nope, I didn't do that yet. Flip the movement. Move George, except he does not move. He does move. He cannot be escorted or moved by a movement card. Okay, so he still moves clockwise, but Biff now moves twice, so if this is removed, he stands up again, and now we're ready for Jennifer to go. We cannot move George, but he is stuck there, but that's okay, because Jennifer can spend something to move to that location. Let's say we do that. Can go here, and when you're in the same space with another character, you can ask to use the powers of their dice. So when Jennifer is here with Einstein, she can also use her special ability to call Marty over. You can have everyone come over here, and she can use one of her dice, and she'll use Einstein's die if Einstein approves, and rolls the 2 pink, gets 2 successes. She can now do this again using another pink, and let's just say we use Marty's pink and blue. And that did not work out so well. 1 success, but then 2 Biff heads, so 1, 2, and now Biff is going to possibly harass them in the future. Maybe next, Jennifer is going to use this one to move. Let's say she goes over here, she uses the blue, and maybe she gets a success here. And you continue like that, taking turns, moving around the board, trying to solve opportunities so that you can get new powers, trying to solve troubles so that you are not stopped from trying to do the things you want to do. Eventually, you're going to move along and you hit a love check. When that happens, if the love marker is in the 0 to 12 zone, you flip one of these tiles face down. If it's in the -1 to -4 zone, you actually flip 2 of them face down. You have only 6 tiles total, so you can lose very quickly if you are not paying attention to what Biff is doing as he's moving around the board harassing Lorraine and George. Terrible things can happen at that time. In just a few minutes, I have run you through 4 complete turns of Back to the Future Back in Time, showing you pretty much every aspect of the gameplay. You have the trouble card that's going to come out and set up a condition that makes it difficult for you to achieve the 2 victory conditions that you must achieve in order to win the game. That card will stay in play until either you remove it through a dice challenge or another trouble card comes into play, removing the first one and just giving you some different condition that's going to harass you. You have the movement cards that will keep George and Lorraine and Biff circling through Hill Valley. You spend all this time doing influence love actions in order to get them together and make them a couple, and they just wander off. They don't care. They don't know who you are. They don't know what they're trying to do. They don't know what their density is. They are just wandering around at random, and you have to put them together and keep them there, specifically out of that negative zone, because when you have a love check and you're in the -1 to -4 zone, you're going to lose 2 of your 6 pictures. We lost one game that way where the pictures just went very quickly. It's hard to recover. There is no way to turn those photos back over. You just have 6 and that is it. And you're going to have multiple love checks over the course of the game. And when you get in the final turns of the game, you're going to have 2 movement cards and 2 love checks coming right on top of each other. So even if you're in the 0 to 12 zone, when you're doing 2 love checks, that is 2 pictures getting flipped over. That's not good. You have to pump up that heart there and keep it in that 3 heart zone in order to win. You are going to collect the parts of the DeLorean, put it at the house. You're going to move the DeLorean, which we pretty much just forgot to do the first time we played. We just never took any move DeLorean actions. I don't know what we were thinking. It was very hard trying to put everything together and figure out things were going. We were not paying enough attention to Biff. We were not fighting Biff. You definitely need to do that in order to put him on his back and just keep him out of play for a while. Fighting is not the answer necessarily, except it is in this case. You definitely need to fight Biff in order to win this game. George learned that lesson, and now you have to learn that lesson as well. You are also trying to solve the opportunity cards because they are going to give you additional powers. You start with 5 powers. You have room for 8 on your card. You want more because the more tiles you have, the more actions you can potentially take in a turn, which is going to let you do more things. You have, for example, a move up to 6 spaces, so you can just do this and pretty much go anywhere on the board in order to do the things that you need to do. If you would ever have a 9th tile, well, when you get tiles again, they're all face down, so at the end of your turn, when you turn them all face up, you just keep the 8 you want and you throw the other ones away. Another reason to do opportunity cards is because you can get items along the way. So at this opportunity where you are trying to scare George, if you successfully do that, you get a power, but you also get the cassette recorder. Cassette player. And this gives you a special ability. Each item that you get goes next to your board, and you can use this once per turn. Once you use it, you just flip it over, and it's exhausted for that turn, but you'll get it back at the end of your turn. You can use items in addition to powers on your turn and on other people's turn if they are in the same space with you. So you can lend them your cassette player, and then you get to use this. When you fail a trouble or opportunity challenge, you can flip this over and you get a power. You at least get something. All the items have different effects. I'll show you a few of those. The radiation suit. I can't read these backwards. Oh, the guitar. Excellent. You have a few other items in here. You can see all these. Sci-Fi magazine, George's notebook. You definitely want George's notebook. You exhaust this to move George up to 2 spaces towards you. You can keep George from wandering off when he's not paying attention to you. You got the mind reading helmet from Doc Brown's house. You have a backpack which lets you keep up to 2 additional powers. So you can have up to 10 powers. The items are extremely good. And the first time we played, we were not paying attention to powering up, to keeping Biff on his back, and to moving the DeLorean. These are all valuable things you must do if you actually want to win the game. Played the second time. Both games were with 3 players on a review copy from Funko Games, and we won the second time. We got everything up to the right spot a few turns early, and then you would effectively just have to keep George and Lorraine from wandering off. You got to keep Biff at a distance. Once the DeLorean is there, it just stays there, and that's okay. But Biff and Lorraine are like these weird AI robots who just sort of turn at random directions like they're possessed, and then they start wandering away. And you just have to turn them around and say, no, 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 no. This is the person for you. You really want to be together with them. So it's an interesting game. It has all sorts of Back to the Future lore in terms of the locations, the opportunities, and the items, the trouble. Everything from that first movie is in this game. It's not a time travel game. It's more just a logistics game where you are trying to get everything in the right place. You're trying to build up an engine of powers. Each player has their own specific, unique power. Einstein was extremely helpful when we played him just because he keeps Biff away. Biff was the trouble spot for us in the first game. We did not use it very well. Marty being able to pull Lorraine towards him, also very helpful as you're trying to boost the love. Jennifer, we use her in one of the games, and that was extremely helpful as well, just trying to match with other people and use their powers. We used people's powers so much better the second time we play, where we really saw the power of trying to maximize the opportunities as we were also building up those powers so we had more powers to use with other people. Everything has to come together in just the right way. And it's interesting too with the clock of the game where everything just rolls along and you can have the DeLorean in the right spot. You can have the love meter up in the right zone, but until you hit that 10:04 spot, it doesn't matter. And some of the trouble cards will actually move the DeLorean backwards. If Biff is in the location or moves into the spot with the DeLorean under one trouble card, then the DeLorean's got to move back. And then so you have to move the DeLorean again or keep Biff away or do all sorts of other things. You're only going to see a few trouble cards, and there are 6 of each level. So you don't know what you're going to get. Starlighter's guitarist injured. Gang prank calls Lorraine. I don't remember that from the movie. Something different. Something not in the movie. How about that? So it's really interesting to play. There's all these Back to the Future elements layered into it through every possibility. And if you haven't seen Back to the Future, it will still make sense. Everything still comes down to you building up an engine of powers. You have to meet these certain conditions. Everything is working against you. You're never really done until you hit that final spot, because George and Lorraine will keep moving and Biff will keep moving and the DeLorean may move backwards of all things. It's kind of interesting just to run through all of that where the pressure's on and you got the finish line coming at you. It all sticks to that movie formula where you have to get everything at the right spot at the right time in order to make sure it works. And sometimes you can do that and you will win. The game even comes with a clock tower dice tower where you can drop the dice in and they will roll out. We found it didn't really work well for me, where dice will often stick inside the clock tower. I'm not sure if I set it up correctly or not. So it was hard to see the dice when they were buried inside the tower, but it is there and perhaps it'll work better for you than it did for me. You can try all these combinations as you are running through the first movie of Back to the Future again and again, courtesy of Prospero Hall and Funko Games.